Today we are talking draft strategies. Sit back and relax. Welcome to the CGAT Blitz. Welcome into the CGAT Blitz podcast. Sunday, July the 10th. We are making our trek through the last little bit before football actually gets rolling here, and I gotta tell you, I cannot wait. My name is Chris Strasbaugh. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Sunday afternoon here in Ohio. We're going to talk Redraft, Dynasty, and I'm going to throw in some Bestball because I'm just now starting to work myself into Bestball, and I'm going to tell you how I've done it so far. This is my second year playing Bestball, and it's kind of a learning process for me. I was in one league last year, 2 leagues this year, and I'm going to tell you how I attacked it and how I attack redraft and dynasty drafts. But first, we got to talk some breaking news.
Here's what we know.
Before we get to Baker Mayfield, and we'll talk about that a little bit, I've got to talk a little bit about what is really hot and what is really ramping up on the Twitterverse right now. If you haven't paid attention to Twitter over the last day or so, you may have missed it, so this could be the first you've heard about it. But New York Jets quarterback Zach Wilson and his former best pal, Dax Milne, have stirred up what I like to call soap opera football. It seems that Zach and his ex-girlfriend, and let me take you back one more step. I don't know who fired the first shot. I do not know who scorched the sky. I don't know who threw the first punch. All I'm getting is what I'm reading. So, Zach Wilson and his girlfriend broke up. Dax Milne decided to play the comforting soul and ended up hooking up with Dax, with Zach Wilson's ex-girlfriend. So, to counterpunch, Zach Wilson ends up hooking up and sleeping with Dax Milne's mom. He pulled the American Pie. He pulled Stifler's mom. As I said, I do not know if this was a retaliation by Zach Wilson or if this was a retaliation by Zach Wilson's ex-girlfriend because Zach Wilson had already did the deed, the dance with no pants, with Dax Milne's mom, and it came out. Like I said, I don't know who fired the first shot. But, I gotta tell you, I'm looking forward to seeing how this story evolves going forward. The big news is that they no longer follow each other on Instagram. Whoop-dee-doo. I don't care about that. These are 2 guys that played college at BYU together. Dax Milne had a fantastic college career thanks to Zach Wilson. Now, did he repay him by doing this? Or was Zach in the wrong by sleeping with the mama first? I don't know. But this is good stuff. This is good stuff. And it's hot on the press right now on Twitter, and it's starting to become a thing. It might even be trending at this point. But my personal opinion is if this was a reaction, not an action, if this was a reaction by Zach Wilson, I got to give the dude 2 thumbs up. And a big old hat tip from here to CGAT Blitz Podcast because, young man, good for you. Now, if you did that first, then, yeah. But, like Kane Harder says, here's what we know. We know that Dax and Zach won't be having too many family get-togethers anymore. Okay, on to more pressing stuff. You can go check out that whole thing between the BYU roommates and stuff, and mom and ex-girlfriend and everything. You can, and now I'm sure I'll learn more as the days and weeks progress. But on to bigger and better things. Baker Mayfield is now a Carolina Panther. This news coming down earlier last week. I haven't had a podcast to talk about it yet, but I want to talk about the fantasy implications before I get into the meat of the day's show. And I think automatically you think stock up for DJ Moore, stock up for Christian McCaffrey, because it's going to take some pressure off of him. The two that are in question to me, that I'm still out on, is Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall. And you might even want to say Tommy Tremble may have a slight bump at the tight end position as well. But this all hinges on if Baker is better than what he was with Cleveland. And I'm not convinced that Baker Mayfield isn't more than just an average run-of-the-mill starting NFL quarterback. I don't attach the word elite to him. I don't add the words generational talent to Baker Mayfield. I think that he is a guy who plays with a tremendous amount of emotion and passion, and I think that's good. I also think he has a huge chip on his shoulder, which, if you ask Tom Brady, is never a bad thing. But I don't know that he's that generational talent that we're going to need him to be in order to make everything better in Carolina. I posted on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else I could when I saw this news, hang on to your shares of Matt Corral. Because I think, and it might not be this year now, of course, but I think, you know what? I'm going to retract that just for a minute. It could be. If we get into week 6 or 7 and Baker Mayfield's just doing stuff, they may move to Matt Corral. Because I still think that Matt Corral is going to play a factor in the big picture for the Carolina Panthers. Now, it did put a little bit of water on his fire for this season with them bringing in Baker. But he's very gifted athletically, and he moves around better than Baker Mayfield does, and he's a good quarterback who I would like to see what he can do in the NFL. So if you got him anywhere, you've stashed him somewhere in your drafts, and he's in your taxi rides, leave him there. If you do plan on trading him, don't just give him away. Try to get something out of the deal. But all of this hinges on if Baker is good and if he can be that guy. And you could say, well, he's going to have a clean slate, and, Matt Rule, maybe the best coach he's had. I don't know. Stefanski was pretty good. Stefanski was kind of a run guy. He was run-oriented. So you say clean slate, new group of receivers, a significant jump at the running back position. I think this takes tremendous amount of pressure off of McCaffrey. If Baker can be solid, that offense can flow. Got a good defense around him, a young defense that's up and coming. So all the signs point to stock up for all these guys. I'm still starting McCaffrey if I have him week 1. You're still starting DJ Moore. And, if you're in deeper leagues, you're probably starting Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall. Just to see what happens. We are a long way from week 1 yet. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But at this point, you're optimistic that this Carolina offense is going to be better than it has been. And a lot of that depends on McCaffrey staying healthy, of course. But now they've got a legitimate quarterback who they're bringing in to right the ship. There's also some reports that him and Darnold are going to compete for the job. I think that's a bunch of crap. I think that's just coach speak. I don't really see a high market for Sam Darnold these days. So I would expect him at some point to either be traded or just given his outright release. That was real life. I had to stop this thing. My dogs were going crazy. Lost all train of thought, so I'm going to try to gear right back up here. Long story short, don't be afraid to draft your shares of Carolina Panthers. Okay? Now, I wouldn't be too overly quick to stack them up. Maybe try to get one. I don't know that I would have Baker Mayfield on my radar, unless you're in a 2 or 3 quarterback league. 3, obviously. 2, sure. 1, no. I'll let somebody else run that race for you. But I do like DJ Moore. Probably a little bit more than I did before. Just because he's always been the kind of guy that carries the load and gets us a lot of targets anyway. So I think this doesn't nothing but help him. My big question is Robbie Anderson. So we'll see how it goes. Draft strategies. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight onto how I draft. Every year, my draft strategies change, but it's not so significant that it's like a life-altering thing. Okay? We're going to start with redraft, and I'm going to go through how I prepare for a redraft. And this is not solid gold. I mean, it's not, rocket science. It's just how I do it. And I've been pretty successful with it over the past decade. As you've heard in many sessions before, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a film guy. I trust my eyes. I believe what I see, and I try to transition that to the next level. So, with that being in mind, let's just start with redraft. And at the beginning, in the middle, and the end of the first 2 rounds is what we're targeting right now. After that, it's just a draft. Okay? So let's start at the beginning. If I'm at the front end of a draft, and it depends on how many people you got in your league, if it's an 8 or 10 teamer, and you're at the beginning of the draft, and this is even if we're talking super flex, I'm not going quarterback early. Okay? I'm not. I'm going to wait. And yes, I'm probably, in a super flex, I'm definitely going to miss out on the 3 big guns. I'm aware of that. Because if I'm drafting in the first part of the draft, when I'm talking like the first 3 or 4 picks, by the time it gets back around to me, those 3 or 4 top QBs are going to be gone, and that's something I have to accept. I will gladly trade that high-end quarterback for a couple of good wide receivers or running backs or one of each at the first part. Now, it would be very tempting for me, and I have not had the 101 in any startup that I've been in so far this year. So I have not had any chance to take Josh Allen at the 101. It would be very hard for me to decide if I did have the 101, if I'm taking Josh Allen or if I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. Yes, folks, I would no longer take Dalvin Cook at the 101 just for business reasons. This is business. It's fun, it's entertainment, but it's also business. Most of these leagues, you're playing for money, and you have to think with your head. Okay? It would be a very tough decision for me. I would have to look at league format. If it's a 1 quarterback league, I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. If it's a 2-quarterback league, I may go ahead and take Josh Allen at the 101 and let Jonathan Taylor fall and then see what comes back to me. It just really depends on how much you love each guy. Fortunately, I say this as a fortunate, I've not had the 101 in the startup, so I don't have to worry about it. Now, there are a couple of leagues where I already have shares of Josh Allen, which are Dynasty leagues. I already have him. Jonathan Taylor's obviously gone. So those choices are made for me. We're talking redraft right now. And if we're talking startup, if it's not Josh Allen, and I'm at 2, 3, or 4, okay, and Taylor's there, I'll take him at the 2, 3, or 4. I wouldn't even shy away from going Justin Jefferson at the 3 or 4 to get that top powerful wide receiver who looks like right now this year, 2022, which is what we're talking about, to be in line for a monster season, barring health and if the stars all align. So when we did the free Bestball league that I started up through Hitman Fantasy Productions last week, I was ecstatic, because it's a super flex. I was ecstatic when I was able to get Jefferson and Chase at the turn. That was my 1 and 2. Sort of ended up drafting RB0. I'll get to that. If I'm in the middle of the first round, okay, this is a little bit easier because some of these decisions are going to be made for you. So if you're at the 5, 6, 7 or the 6, 7, 8, depending on where you're at and how many players or how many teams you have, some of these decisions are going to be made for you. So if Eckler was to drop to you or Dalvin Cook was to fall to you at the 7 or 8, Christian McCaffrey was to somehow people say, yeah, I'm going to grab a quarterback because it's a super flex, and a couple of quarterbacks go, and you're able to snag. If you could get a Christian McCaffrey at like the 6, 7, or 8, that's gold. That's gold this year because he's still going very, very high. If you're at the end of a redraft, to me, this is even easier because a lot of these decisions, more decisions are getting made for you, and you're going to do what I call letting the draft come to you. And my preference is to draft, if it's a 10-teamer, I prefer to draft in the 9 or 10. Because not only are you drafting on the turn, if you're at the 9, it's coming right back around to you. So you could potentially get 2 top 12s. So I prefer drafting at the end as I do the top. So then you read the draft. You read your first 8, 9 picks. Who's gone? Okay? You let the draft come to you. Make a decision. At this point, I'm still not taking a quarterback. Because odds are Josh Allen's gone. As is probably Mahomes because people are jumping on that. And that's fine. I don't blame them for doing that. I'm just going to load up elsewhere. Because you're going to get a decent quarterback as long as you don't wait too long. There is and we're going to get into that into the second round. There is a line that you can't cross. Because if you wait, and it could be just as simple as waiting 1 round too long, then you're going to get stuck with a quarterback 3 being your quarterback 1. And you don't want that. Okay? There's a fine line where you're like, if I'm flirting with this and I'm going to hold off on quarterback for as long as I possibly can, know that if you wait 1 round too long, quarterbacks are going to fall like crazy and you're going to get stuck with Zach Wilson being your quarterback 1. And I'm fine with Zach Wilson being my quarterback 2 or 3. I don't want him as my quarterback 1. So, going into the second round, okay, you've made your first round selection. Okay, and if it was your quarterback, let's say you was at the end, and somehow Mahomes, Lamar Jackson fell to you, and you went quarterback, you need to be done drafting quarterbacks for at least 3 or 4 rounds. You need to add up your other players. You need to stock up. Go a couple running backs, running back, wide receiver, split them up, running back, wide receiver, running back, in rounds 2, 3, and 4. if you've drafted a quarterback. Now, if you didn't take a quarterback and you're like me, you're waiting, okay, you've already got a wide receiver or a running back. I'm not taking the tight end in the first round. I don't care if it's 12 teams, tight end premium, I'm not taking one. That's just my own personal philosophy. You may see it different. I don't. I'm waiting. Somebody else can have Kelsey. Someone else can have Kittle. They can have Waller if they wanted him in the first round. That's a wasted pick in my opinion. Even if it's tight end premium, people, I'm still not taking one that early. The earliest I would take one is if I would come back around in round 3 and I've got a wide receiver and a running back already on my team, and Darren Waller or Hawkinson may still be out there, then I may consider thinking about it. But 98% of the time, I'm snatching another running back or another wide receiver. I'm going to wait on tight end. Now, that strategy has bit me in the butt several times over several years. That's my personal preference, okay? I admit it, every chance I get, I am not the world's foremost on the tight end position. I don't like it in fantasy football because after you get past about 4 or 5, to me, they're all dart throws, and it's just warm bodies. You're hoping to get, you're happy if you get double figures out of it. I mean, that's a win for me. If they score a touchdown, it's a bonus. But that's my weakness. The tight end position in fantasy football is my weakness. Anybody who knows me, who's played with me, who knows how my teams are constructed, can see that. So you may feel differently. If you feel strong enough and you say, I want to get, if I've got my quarterback, I got Mahomes in the first, at the end of the first, I want to come back around at like pick 203 and get Kelsey because you know he's the constant on that offense. Everything else has kind of changed this year. I'm not going to hate you for that because you've stacked up one of the best throwers in the game along with one of the best tight ends to ever play the game. So I don't hate you for that. But what that's going to cost you is some serious running backs. At that point, you're going to have to go ahead and modify your brain to draft in the running back 0. Because when you come back into the third, you're looking at a lot of them running backs are going to be gone, and the wide receivers are probably starting to get taken. They're not going to start to dwindle because there's so many of them. But you're going to have to make a decision in round 3. If you've went quarterback tight end in round 1, you're going to have to say, okay, in round 3, I've got to figure out what running backs are left, if they're worth taking in round 3, or if I'm going to wait till the running back dead zone and draft RB0 and go with that. And I'm going to tell you, it's worked for me. 2 years in a row, I drafted with the running back 0 strategy, and I won championships back-to-back leagues. But it was because my quarterbacks were strong and my wide receivers could carry the day. And I had also a little bit of luck on my side because Antonio Gibson was available late, as was Cam Akers his rookie year, late. And those guys helped keep me afloat. Now, had it would have been last year with those two guys, I wouldn't have been so successful. I wouldn't have gotten so lucky. But at that point, you're going to have to say, am I drafting in the running back 0 mode, or am I going to grab whoever's left? And maybe it's a David Montgomery, who I love David Montgomery this year. I think he's going to be a workhorse. He's going to carry a lot of balls, and he can catch the ball. So, I mean, in PPR leagues, he still has some value, but I think he's going to be a target hog. So if you can get a David Montgomery and you think he may fall to you in the 4th or 5th, you can hold off again and say, yeah, I'm going to go something else. I'm going wide receiver here. I'll take my chances with the running backs coming back around. And then you're looking at, say you've went Mahomes, Kelsey, and say, let's say a T. Higgins or a, I don't think Devontae Adams may have dropped that far, but it's possible, depending on draft strategies. But if you could grab an Adams right there, or a T. Higgins, because I love T. Higgins even as a wide receiver too. I think he's fantastic, and I love that Cincinnati offense this year. and then come back and say, okay, I missed out on Montgomery, but Pollard's still here. He's going to have some value in PPR. I'm going to take him, and then I'll go from there. Never a bad idea. I just want to stress to you that if you do this, and you say, I'm going to take the running back zero approach, you can't expect miracles at the running back zero position. Until we get to Bestball, which is what I'll cover, at the end. I love running back zero in Bestball because when they hit, you get points, and you can take them late, and you don't care because the draft capital is low. I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's move on to Dynasty, where things get a little bit different. Okay, as I said earlier, these guys are already gone. Okay, you're rookie drafted. You've rookie drafted. This is when you've taken your Matt Corrals and your Breece Halls and all the love and hype that Christian Watson is getting. This is team specific, and we'll talk a little bit of IDP first because we play in a lot of IDP leagues, and IDP has really, really grown over the past 5 seasons. In our Devy draft, in the Devy Hitman League, I had, in my first pick in the first round, I took Will Anderson from Alabama because I wanted to strengthen up my defensive side of the ball in the Devy Hitman. So I went defense. That's Devy. This is your NFL draft. Okay? This is for your season. If you're drafting early, unless you really just have to have your guy, don't take your IDP guy with the first couple of picks. It's always cool, and you get a bunch of oohs and ahs and, FUs and aw mans and stuff like that when you do that. That's cool. But there's also probably somebody out there that you've missed out on that's going to score more points for you and maybe a bigger contributor to your team career-wise, Dynasty as a whole. So as much as I love Jermaine Johnson this year, because he was a Knoll, first-round draft pick, loved the landing spot, I had to lay off of taking him, in the first round of our Dynasty draft. I had to wait. And I thought, well, if somebody else takes him, they take him, and I'll have to live with it. There was other guys, and I'm not saying this is. I got this in my notes. Don't just draft team need all the time. Okay, I love team need, and you do need team need, but I'm going to use CeeDee Lamb as a perfect example in the real NFL draft. When he fell to the Cowboys a few years ago in the draft, that really wasn't a position of need right then. It was more like, holy crap, CeeDee Lamb just dropped to us. We would be a fool not to take him right here. The same goes for your fantasy teams. If somebody falls to you and you don't really need another top end wide receiver because you've got a whole bunch, but if let's say Sky Moore were to fall to you in your Dynasty drafts at the end of the first round, and you're like, Sky Moore, big-time college production last year, going to one of the most potent offenses in the NFL, going to play a role, but I don't really need a wide receiver, but this is a steal for me right here. You take that player. Okay, and then when it comes back around, then maybe you address, team need. So don't get so tunnel visioned on I have to go, and I've done this before, and I've done it before, and I've regretted it. I went into drafts thinking I have to take this position because I really have a terrible need at this position. But then your draft gets going, and certain players are available, and you look at what you need team-wise. You're like, man, I can come back, and I'm sure one of these 3 guys is going to be there when it comes back to me. I'm grabbing this right here. Do it. Stockpile it. Maybe you trade it for something later on. And I've done that before where I was like, I'm going into this draft, and I'm taking this person because I really need this position. and I've regretted it. So don't be so tunnel vision like I have been in the past, and let a perfectly good fantasy asset go to somebody else when you could have them and maybe trade it to somebody else and get bigger value going forward because it's a dynasty league. 2 quarterback superflex situations in dynasty are always tricky. That is team dependent 100%. This year the quarterback crop was not so significant that we was, fighting over what quarterbacks we wanted. There were 2, maybe 3 that we thought maybe on, and so it's going to be a year by year, season by season, strategy specific on what you're looking at as far as quarterbacks go. If you are at the top of your dynasty draft, that means you most likely have either traded up or your team kind of stunk and you're at that position anyway. And you're probably looking at several positions, in which case you got to say, I need several things. Quarterbacks aren't my strong suit, but this year's quarterback crop isn't their strong suit. I'm going elsewhere. And that's the right move. That's the right move. And it might bite you, and you end up not getting a quarterback, or it might be something where it comes back to you, and you're like, well, the quarterbacks are gone, and I'm stuck with Bailey Zappi. Don't take Bailey Zappi there. Now you're just not drafting a quarterback, and you're just going to have to figure it out. But if you're so specific on I need a quarterback, but the only ones that are available are not even long shots to play, they're just probably not going to play, such as a Sam Howell, Bailey Zappi. Don't take them right there. Let them either fall to you later, or let somebody else have them, and you're going to be just fine. Because you can take something else. Maybe this is where you say, okay, I want to grab this IDP guy, because now it's a position of need, and I'm going to let somebody else have Zappi. I'm taking Jermaine Johnson. That would be the move. Okay, Bestball. And this is a little new. This is all new to me. Okay, I participated in a fundraiser last year for children's cancer. I went 10-8. Was one and done in the playoffs in that league, but it was a lot of talent. It was a big league, a 12-teamer, and I thought for being my first best ball, I had a good showing. Started out like 1-4, and I thought this is abysmal, this is terrible. But then, my team kind of got rolling, and I rattled off a few wins. Ended up having a pretty decent showing for my first one, especially in a group with a bunch of fantasy experts who are all, they do this stuff, for a living. But best ball is fun in a way that it's like you draft your team and you don't have to do much more than that. So if you like to draft, if you like to say, I love to draft, there's an adrenaline rush in drafting, but I hate managing my team, best ball's for you. Best ball's for you, kids, because you draft it and pretty much you're done. Now, there are some leagues where free agency is available and you can work free agents. There are some leagues, like I joined a Dynasty best ball this year. It's a free one, and I was just kind of curious on how that worked with it being Dynasty. Because last year the one that I did was best ball. You draft your team, no moves, no trades, no nothing. What you draft is what you're stuck with. And injuries and everything else all played a factor, and you couldn't replace nobody. You couldn't drop nobody. Ended up going 10-8, which, like I said, pretty happy with that. The one league that I formed through HFP is not a dynasty. It's just a best ball league. But I did allow free agent moves, fab bidding, no trades. The league that I joined, that's a dynasty league, is ran by another gentleman who I actually have never met in my life. Been in the league with him for a few years. Is a dynasty. You can trade and you can add free agency because it is a dynasty. And what it does is it just automatically, if you work your waiver wire and stuff, it still puts the best available player in for you throughout the course of the year. I'll be interested to see how that league goes, how it progresses, because it is Bestball Dynasty, which to me seems like a little bit of a contradiction to itself. Anyway, a couple of strategies on how I drafted both of those this year. They were a little bit different because one was, a redraft and one was a dynasty. But if you do some reading, you'll see that they say stacks are important. Stack up your quarterbacks and your wide receivers. I do not argue with that, but I do not want you to rest your entire strategy on that. Okay, if you are not able to get Burrow and Jamar Chase, don't think it's the end of the world. Okay, maybe you can get Burrow and T. Higgins a little bit later on, a round or two later. Okay, but don't let it destroy you if you don't even get that. Okay, and in the one league that I created, it was a super flex, so I was able to pair up Dak and CeeDee Lamb. It happened to work out. I took 3 wide receivers in a row. Definitely drafted RB0 in that league because it's best ball. What I talked about earlier was running backs in best ball, as the way I'm looking at it, are like a gold mine. Because you're going to have those weeks where running backs just show up out of the blue, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, 80 yards receiving through the air. And that's what you want in best ball. So once I let this, like I said earlier, I let the draft come to me. I was actually drafting at the end of the draft, at the turn. I let it come to me, and I went Chase Higgins back-to-back. It came back to me. CeeDee Lamb was still available. So I took CeeDee, and then I went ahead and got Dak because the quarterbacks had started to fall off. And I thought, well, I got CeeDee. I might as well try to pair him up with Dak and take that shot, and let's see how it goes. Stacks are important, and it's good to have them, but don't let it be, if it comes to you, that's what we were just talking about in dynasty drafts. If somebody falls to you, perfect example, in this same draft, Darren Waller made it all the way to the 9th round because I played the tight end position. I put a tight end position in the league, and Darren Waller made it all the way to the 9th round. Like, I'm not letting Darren Waller fall any farther. So I grabbed him in the 9th round. That to me is a gift. Okay? That draft, the draft capital on him is huge. Okay, he dropped all the way to the 9th round. I got one of the top 8 or 10 tight ends in the league. You may even say top 5, but that's probably stretching it. That fell to me in the 9th round. Because wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks were all going, and the tight ends were not really forgotten about, but they were picked secondary over other positions. So I say that to say this: if you can try to stack up a guy with a quarterback, that's good, but it's not the end of the world. In that league last year that I went 10-80, and I didn't have a quarterback stack. I didn't. And I did okay. Best ball's tricky, but it's very fun because it's like an investment that you put in months ago when you drafted. And, of course, now we do have the moves and stuff. But if you don't have any moves, like, okay, I drafted really well, or I drafted like crap. And my team's won 3 games all year. And what do I always say? I never lose. I either win or I learn. So my overall best ball strategy is this. And it all goes back. I'm going to tie this all back into redraft because best ball and redraft basically are the same thing. Best ball, redraft, same thing. What did I say? Let the draft come to you. Depending on where you draft at. Beginning, middle, or end. Let it come to you. Okay? Some of these decisions are going to be made for you, and you can eliminate A, B, C, D, and you're going to get F, H, W, whatever comes to you. The thing about Bestball is, and this is my second year, so I don't want to sound like I know every single thing about it. The thing about Bestball is don't give up on your team just because you lose a few games to start. And it's a perfect example because last year, like I said, I started out, I was like 1-3 or 1-4, and I thought, well, this is horrible. But then guys started to perform, and either injuries happened and a guy got an opportunity or whatever the case may be, and started winning a few games. Don't give up on your Bestball team just because, you started out 0-4. And I say that about fantasy in general. If you start out 0-3, you're okay. 0-4, you're okay. 0-5, and you're in trouble. Same with Bestball. Don't give up on it. You're like, well, I drafted terrible. You never know. You never know. Because in the last couple of rounds, you may have had to take a running back like Tyler Algier. Perfect example. Tyler Algier, you may have got him really, really late. And by week 5, he may be the premier running back for Atlanta. And he's getting all the carries, all the goal work on the goal line. And putting up big numbers for you because he's finally worked himself in there. And you may have started 0-3, 0-4, and then all of a sudden somebody like Algier pops up, gets you a couple of wins, and salvages your season. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm only 2 games out from the 2 guys ahead of me. I'm not out of this yet. And voila, you're right back in it. So Bestball is fun, and I'm looking forward to my second year in Bestball, and looking forward to see how I do. I've got 2 leagues that I'm in this year, and every player that's in it is really, really big time. They all pay attention, and they all do their job, and they all, are trying their best or doing everything they can to make their teams better. So we'll see how it goes, and I'm looking forward to the season. That'll wrap it up. Draft strategies from my point of view. Take with that what you will. My name is Chris Strasball. You can find me on Twitter at CGAPBlitz. You can find my podcast everywhere. I'm actually submitting my podcast to Amazon. Waiting for a response to see if they accept me. I'll be on Amazon soon. Have a great week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll see you next time on The Blitz.